Yes, I can't read that, but I'm sure it is recording. Super. Where the LGBT liberation began, we're going to take you back to the Stonewall Riots in 1969 in New York. And on the left there, we've got Marsha P. Johnson, who was a black gay trans woman. She was 17 when she arrived in New York with little to no money and was excluded after being excluded from a Christian family. She played a key role in the protests that followed the riot in 1969, and was later the founder of the Gay Liberation Front. In 1990, she was diagnosed with HIV, and she contracted through sex work and later died in 92, and was found floating in the Hudson River. At first, suicide was considered the cause, but through protest to the police, they reopened the case in 2012 and concluded that likely homicide took place. On the left of that picture there, we've got Sylvia Riviera. She was a trans activist, a drag queen and a performer, and had previously been involved in the Black civil rights movement and the peace movement. The night when the police came to get their payoff, as they called it, or their sponsorship of the community said no one fought back. So Sylvia actually debunked, because it was considered that she threw the first Molotov cocktail. She said, no, that wasn't me, but I definitely threw the second. And I just want to sort of give you a bit of a quote of what she said. She said, "Oh, I was instigating certain things, but I knew we would get it. I was knocked around a bit by a couple of plainclothes men. I didn't really get hurt. I was very careful that night, thank God. But I saw other people being hurt by the police. There was one drag queen, they brought her out. I don't know what she said. They just beat her into a bloody pulp. There were a couple of dykes too that they took out and threw in a car. They got out the other side. It was an inhumane, senseless bull, and there's another word after that." So following this, in 1970, the first ever gay march took place, but drag queens and trans people were excluded by the Gay Activist Alliance, as they were dubious about people joining in. Often those were also women of colour who were excluded. Marsha and Sylvia set up a Street Transvestite Action Revolutionary Star around 1971, and they supported each other as a community, building, providing food, shelter and clothing to young people on the streets. On her death in 2002, the Sylvia Rivera Law Project was set up in the aim that all people should be free to self-determine their gender identity expression regardless of income or race, or without fear of harassment, discrimination or violence. And in 2021, the first ever statues of trans people in New York was unveiled, and that was of Johnson and Silvera. So that's taking you back very back to the beginning. I think, Claire, I think you've got a little box. Are you able to turn that? Can you see a box?
I can't see a box.
Oh, I can. There we are. I found it. It's done it on mine. Yeah, I haven't got it on my system screen anymore. I'm not sure if there might be a lag on the system. We'll try and sort that out so it disappears. It's not, no, it doesn't exist on my screen at all anymore. Yeah, let me stop sharing and then let me share again. No, it's still there. I'm sorry, we'll just have to put up with it until we work out how it's fixed. Following on from that, there was the Christopher Street Liberation Day, and that was proposed by the Eastern Region Conference on Homophile Organizations in a motion in 1969, and that's where proposed that the demonstration to be held annually on the last Saturday in June in New York City to commemorate the 1969 spontaneous demonstrations on Christopher Street and this demonstration shall be called Christopher Street Liberation Day. So that is really the startings, the foundings of the gay pride festivals that took place. So now going to let me. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So in the UK, whilst this was happening in the 1970s, 1972 and 1971, branches of the Gay Liberation Front, the GLF, were set up, and two British activists, Aubrey Walter and Bob Mellor, travelled to the US to attend the Black Panthers Revolutionary People's Convention, what focused on black civil rights and the LGBTIQ plus movement. They returned home to London, and the first meeting of GLF took place in October 1970. In the UK, homosexuality had been partially decriminalised by the Sexual Offences Act in 1967. A few years earlier, this meant it was no longer for two men over 21 to have sex in private in England and Wales. The first meeting they held was an impromptu meeting, and it was about the police using unlawful tactics to attract men in public toilets and then to capture them, prosecute them and charge them with indecency. And the first protest in 1972 is shown there as well. They stopped organising actually in 1973. I'm going to fast forward through the next stage quite quickly. So in 1977, this is just really a highlight. The first lesbian and gay trade union congress took place. In 1979, The Change of Sex airs on BBC Two, and it follows the story of Julia Grant, who underwent the first ever medical transition, and was one of the first documentary films about transgender identities and experience. In 1980, the Criminal Justice Scotland Act took place, and this was sex between two men over the age of 21 in private is decriminalised in Scotland and lowered to 18. In 22nd of October in 1981, the Duggan versus the United Kingdom case took place, and this was Geoffrey Duggan from Belfast who filed a complaint with the European Commission on Human Rights after being interrogated by the Royal Ulster Constabulary about his sexual activity. The court found that Northern Ireland's criminalisation of same-sex violated the European Convention on Human Rights, Article 8, which states that everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life, including in home and correspondence. It was the first ever case in the UK and Europe to in favour of LGBT rights, and male homosexual sex was decriminalised in Northern Ireland in the following year. In 1981, we had the first case of AIDS and HIV in the UK, and hopefully this video will play and work. We'll see. There's no sound. It's not great. We'll come back to the video when we share the I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure why there's no sound. When we share the video, we'll come back to it. We'll share a PowerPoint. So, but if you haven't noticed that video before, it's a tombstone, and it talks about anyone can catch this, so protect yourself. In 1982, the Terence Higgins Trust was set up in response to Terence Higgins, who had died of HIV, and it became the Terence Higgins Trust, and it was the UK's first ever charity. In 1982, as well, a Black and Lesbian Gay Centre opened in central Greater London Council to request funding for a centre which provide advice and counselling, helpline, library for other resources. And it was abolished in 1986. So it lasted a few years, and in March 1987, AZT was made available in UK, and this was a medication used to prevent and treat HIV, and became available on prescription in the UK in March 1987. So thankfully, because the sound doesn't work, you don't need to listen to Mrs. Thatcher. But in 1988, Section 28 of the Local Government Act came in. And I'm not going to cover all of this, but just as it says on the screen there, it was prohibited on promoting homosexuality by teaching or by publicising material. A local authority shall not intentionally promote homosexuality or publish material in the intention of promoting homosexuality, promote the teaching in any maintained school of the acceptability of homosexuality as a pretend family relationship. So basically, if you grew up between 1988 and 2003, when this was abolished, so only 20 years ago this year, as a young LGBTIQ plus person, you had no access to any information, any advice, any guidance, any safe sex practices, any understanding that you might be different, or you might, because it wasn't discussed. In people like when I was at school, we got taught that a relationship was between a man and a woman. So as a young person, and particularly millennials, because they grew up during this time, actually now, you know, are facing quite a lot of sort of historical trauma that actually has came out because they were told basically they were wrong from the beginning. And as I said, I'll share around the video of Margaret Thatcher, who at Tory conference told us it was absolutely wrong in 1988. So fast forwarding the next 11 years through the Major and New Labour period, quite a lot happened in this time. So in 1989, Stonewall was formed by Ian McKellen and Lord Cashman, amongst others. And on the 23rd of September 2003, Stonewall was granted charitable status. So it took them 20-something years again to get charity status. In 1990, Outrage was formed, and this is Peter Thatchell's, one of his groups, and this was following the murder of several gay men in London and an increase in targeting policing of gay people. It was the most prominent gay rights direct action group in the UK till it disbanded in 2011. In 1990, the Lesbian and Gay Police Association was founded, and it ceased to exist in 2014 after cuts to funding. The Scottish government still funds it to this day. 1992, so the World Health Organization removes homosexuality from its list of disorders. So after 24 years, on the 17th of May in 1992, the WHO removes homosexuality as a mental order. And that's why Idaho Day is actually marked on the 17th of May each year to recognize that important date for the community. In 1994, the age of consent for gay men is reduced to 18, so bringing it in line to what it was for others. But Edwina Currie introduced an amendment, but it was defeated, and that was to bring it in line to 16, like the rest of the country. In 1994, the London Lesbian Avengers was founded. This isn't a Marvel comic. I think they were probably the original Avengers, but the first group's action was to invade the Queen Victoria Monument near Buckingham Palace to demonstrate against Queen Victoria's alleged assertion that lesbians do not exist. The group also campaigned for comedian Sandy Toxic when she came out in 1994 after being dropped as the MC of a Save the Children charity event. And in 1998, the Bolton Seven, what was a group of people who had been persecuted under the 1967 Act, won a court case to have their appeal overturned and their prison sentence overturned as well, as they were still being held unlawfully in prison. So, what happened when? We'll do some some shouty out things. If you're online as well, you can shout out as well. So the UK government lifts bans on lesbians, gays and bisexual people serving in the armed forces. When do we think this happened? Give you a clue, it's between 2000 and 2010. So that was in January 2000. Before that, they could be fired for being LGBTIQ+. The age of consent for gay and bi men lowered to 16. (2001).
Oh, okay.
Thanks for joining in, though, Kelsey.
I firmly believed it was 18 until I was an adult.
So equal rights for adopting to same-sex couples. Claire, have you got a view? When do you think this came in?
Oh gosh, I can vaguely remember these things happening, but I've got no concept of time. I'm gonna go 2008.
2002, equal rights were adopted, and also single people were also given that same right at the same time. Also at that time, in that act, unmarried heterosexual couples could also adopt or foster children for the first time as well. So I've given this one away already. Repeal of Clause 28 in England and Wales, that happened in 2003, so only 20 years ago. Employment equality, religion or belief regulations also happened in 2003, and that meant that people couldn't not hire people for being LGBTIQ or promoting them based on their grounds of sexual orientation or gender identity. They didn't, however, in these rules have the same rights against bullying, and they didn't have to benefit from the same pay or pension provision because they didn't have a stable family as their heterosexual couples. It did make it illegal to discriminate against people in the workplace in a later amendment to that bill. The Civil Partnerships Act came in 2004, and this gay people officially came in on the 5th of December 2005, was the first ever civil partnership. In 2004 as well, the Gender Recognition Act came in that gave trans people full legal recognition in their appropriate gender. And 2008, the Human Fertilization and Embryology Act. They have snazzy titles, don't they? Came in, and this meant that same-sex couples were recognised as legal parents of a child they conceived using through donation of sperm or embryos. Fast forward slightly into the Cameron era. Yes, just for those people who didn't hear online, Sanjeev asked a question in the chamber saying, is there has been any movement to now? So yeah, 2010 to 2018. So in 2010, the Equality Act came into place, what I'm sure we all know about, what gave the 9 protected characteristics. In 2013, the Same-Sex Couples Act, Marriage Same-Sex Couples Act, was brought in, and it came into effect in 2014, and the first same-sex marriage took place in England and Wales on the 29th of March 2014. In 2013, Alan Turing received his posthumous royal pardon for his supposed or previously conviction of gross indecency, and as we know, he was chemically castrated. 2017, the Alan Turing law came in, and that basically undid all previous pieces of instances of criminal convictions of gross indecency against men, came in and overturned all of those previous convictions. The campaign for implementation of that in Scotland and Northern Ireland is still ongoing. So if you were convicted in Scotland or Northern Ireland, you still have that on your criminal conviction. And in 2018, Northern Ireland is the only country in the UK without equal marriage at this point. I'm going to be quiet in a minute and give over to Kelsey and Elle. So this just really highlights some of the first prides that took place in the UK. So we can see in 1973, the Sussex Gay Liberation Front marched through Brighton, followed by Gay Dance at the Royal Albert Hall. Manchester in 1985 began. London hosted Europride in 1992 and described then as the biggest gay event of a decade. And we fast forward a lot to 2022, when Pride in Luton was the first Pride event ever to take place in Luton and Bedfordshire, with over 2,000 people joining in and marking the occasion. And that leads us nicely on to Kelsey, who is the current chair of Pride in Luton, and she's going to talk a little bit about that journey and what it's like and what service provision and things are like in Luton right now.
Absolutely. So hello everybody, thank you for inviting me to talk to you today. I love any opportunity to talk about what we're doing. And one of the things that I wanted to start with was a bit of a focus on what the picture is like in Luton at the moment for LGBTQ plus people. I love living in Luton. I was born in Luton, went to school in Luton, went away to university, and have come back here as an adult, raise my children, work and live in the town. And it's not a bad place to be as an LGBT person. It is a town that overwhelmingly accepts diversity. It overwhelmingly is apparent that different cultures are welcome in this town. And I think the thing that we need to reflect on at the moment is that the LGBT culture and pride is a new part to this town. And although I think that it's not a bad place to live for our community at all, there are things going on maybe outside of the mainstream that make it quite difficult. So I want to tell you about a couple of instances that I have come across in the last few weeks. So I was messaged by a gay couple who are asylum seekers living in Luton in a hotel. And they messaged me through the Pride Instagram page because they didn't really know who else to reach out to and where to go. While these two guys were walking back to their hotel, which is Chiltern Hotel, they were walking down Dunstable Road and I had petrol thrown over them from people in a car. Horrible slurs shouted at them, just absolutely made to feel. They didn't know what was being thrown at them. They said they didn't know whether someone was throwing petrol at them, acid at them, water at them. It could have been anything. They were absolutely terrified. They contacted the police and were given a crime reference number. No immediate support was offered to them, no kind of counselling, and they felt like they didn't want to live in Luton anymore. That has since now been brought to the attention of many more people in the police force, and they have been dealt with and given support. But their first reaction was, these two people were from Kazakhstan. They'd come to Luton because they didn't feel safe to be who they were in Kazakhstan, and were like, oh, people told us that the UK was safe, and now we don't feel safe to be here. And I think that as we are a town, whether it was chosen, planned, accidental or not, that welcomes people in as a safe place, we need to be aware that the needs of, like, for example, LGBTQ plus asylum seekers also need to be met. Another scenario that I want to share with you comes from my day job. So some of you might already know I work in sexual health. I work in the outreach team. Well, I'm coordinator of sexual health outreach, which I thought meant going into schools and talking to young people about sex education, but actually it means coordinating everything to do with sexual health that kind of happens outside of our building. So I had a teacher contact me from a school in Luton asking for our help to plan and deliver their statutory RSE curriculum that covers LGBTQ plus people. They had tried to teach this lesson and young people in year 10 and 11 made a conscious decision to turn their chairs around and face the other way. And they say, we're not accepting of this. This is not okay. We don't want this in our school. This isn't agreed by our religion. And almost an entire class over and over and over again turn their chairs around and refuse to engage in the lesson. So when teachers come back to us and talk about that, it's a difficult one. We need an approach from the top down in all communities that actually it is something that's part of statutory education. It is something that's real and part of our communities, and it's not going anywhere. So I think that if there was one message I wanted to get across of how the council can support, it's to help us make sure that that statutory RSE is being delivered, that LGBT people are given the platform like we are now to be visible in Luton. Sorry, move on to the next slide. That's all right. Okay, so on a positive note, I would like to talk a little bit about Pride in Luton. Pride in Luton was set up in response to steering groups that were put on by the council to identify the needs of different communities. And when a group of people got together to give their views, they decided to stay together and actually make something happen. I wasn't part of those initial consultations, but I feel really privileged to have been able to get involved right at the start and have the opportunity to take Pride in Luton in lots of different directions. So last year, we put on Luton's very first Pride Festival, and it was terrifying and spectacular and amazing and beautiful and everything it could possibly have been. We had no idea how this event would go. We had no idea whether people would protest. We had no idea whether people would boycott it or turn up or come in force. And actually, over 2,000 people attended. We had great support from local police, from security, from the council. And actually, we had no instances of hate crime or drama or any sort of negativity at all. And actually, I felt completely overwhelmed by just watching the amount of people in the town who were walking maybe just from the mall to the bus station or the train station, who were dancing in the street and singing along. And actually, it was just an opportunity for a completely overwhelmingly good experience. Okay. Oh yeah, you flicked, but it hasn't changed yet. So we did not want to be an organisation that puts on a party once a year. And quite honestly, Pride in Luton has grown and is about so much more than the event, which we are going to continue to put on and will continue to be amazing because we put on good events in Luton. We really do. But over the last year, we've had an opportunity to be involved in all sorts of different things. We were given a Love Luton Award, which was a really fantastic experience. I personally got to meet the King, which is something that I never thought I would be doing. And actually, regardless of anything else, the fact that a local LGBT organisation were invited to go and meet the King meant an incredible amount to the community. We've put on socials, we've had picnics, and we've been working with Carnival with the Carnival Arts Centre to create costumes, and we're going to be walking in the carnival. We did last year, and last year there was 6 of us, and it was quite scary. And again, it was an overwhelmingly positive experience. Like, people from Carnival who were much more experienced were so helpful and so welcoming. It was fantastic. Yeah, so it's just lots of good stuff going on and lots to look forward to. So we are organising Pride in Luton again this year. It will take place on the 24th of June, and it's going to be, I'm not even going to lie, it's going to be bigger and better than ever before. We're very excited to have the addition of the Pocket Park for Hat Gardens, to be able to use that, and I think that's going to be really exciting. What I would say to anybody who's here, anybody who's watching or is going to watch this back, is that we are in desperate need of people to volunteer to help us on the day. There's a lot of emphasis of like, oh, well, it's an LGBT event, that's not my thing. But actually, we don't want to ask our community to do all the volunteering and all the stewarding, which means they don't actually get to like participate and enjoy the day. So there's a link on our website if anybody wants to sign up to volunteer. We're doing it in slots, so it'll only be a few hours of your time on the day, and you get provided with lunch and things like that. But yeah, we really are crying out for people that want to help, so that would be really good. I can't remember what else I was going to say. That's okay. But it's because I was going to say about that and then say, it's okay. So I was going to say that one of the things that we're working on at Pride is setting up specific support groups. Our first support group is going to be Luton Trans Admin, and Elle's going to talk to you more about that. But we also have a little bit of funding and hopefully some capacity to put on groups to support families of LGBT like young people who don't know how best to support their children, and also looking at doing more activities for queer families to get involved in, and lots of different things. There's lots of good stuff coming up. Thank you very much for giving me your time to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at the moment, and I will hand over to Elle to talk about being trans in Luton and trans admin.
This is novel, this is. I like all this. Hi, I'm Elle. I'm 34 and I'm a wife and mother of 2 awesome kids. I work in the NHS and I'm a trustee of Pride in Luton. In my spare time, I enjoy being outdoors, whether that's in my garden, going camping in the camper van, or just out walking my dog. I also happen to be transgender. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with that term, it means the sex I was assigned at birth does not correspond to who I am now. It also means that on a day-to-day basis, I, like many other trans people around the world, face discrimination, harassment, and even being murdered just for existing. And that's quite frightening. Fighting and debates around trans rights are being used by those in power as a divisive distraction. Now, luckily for me, I am surrounded by some amazingly supportive friends, family, and colleagues, and without them, I wouldn't be here today talking with you all. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today, is allies. Does anyone here know what it means to be an ally to the LGBTQ+ community? At all? We've all heard the word, but does anyone really know what that means? So anyone, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, can support the trans community. But being an ally takes action. It means staying informed on current issues and legislation impacting the lives of trans people. They speak up for fairness and support equality by fighting for policies that protect all LGBTQ+ people from discrimination. Trans people exist within our communities, networks, and families. Someone in this room right now could be questioning their identity, and you'd have no idea. And I believe the best chance for that person and for all trans people to not only exist, but to thrive lies with the support from their allies. The language you use matters both in your professional capacity, but also in private amongst friends and family. Speak out if you witness transphobia, not just on a large scale, but call out the nasty joke in the group chat or people being misgendered. It really does matter. Take a minute to look at your forms and resources from the perspective of a trans person. Question that alienating policy that creates barriers and serves no actual purpose. Take it upon yourself to seek out and amplify trans voices. Please listen to us. It is exhausting to be expected to show up front and centre to battle on a day-to-day basis, but with an army behind you, it's much less of a challenge. Allies are important and welcome supporters of the LGBT community. They have a powerful, influential voice, and they help create a platform for activism to fight homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia. And that creates a safer town and world for everyone. At Pride in Luton, we are working hard to create space for trans people to build a local community. We set up Luton Trans Admin to support the complex and varied need of local trans people. We're launching after this year's Pride with a range of workshops and social activities, and are supported by Luton Sexual Health and the East London Foundation Trust. I totally understand that what I'm asking you to do today takes courage. I'm asking you to be vocal in support for the trans community and to fight for rights that don't even necessarily affect you and challenge transphobia in Luton. I know that's a lot to ask, but it's taken me a lot of courage to stand here in front of everyone I'm not a public speaker or an activist. I'm just a member of a community putting themselves out there and asking for support. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Elle. I know that was not the easiest thing. Can you just turn off your... Not the easiest thing for you to do as well. It would feel remiss not to follow on after Elle just said that without mentioning Brianna J, a 16-year-old trans girl who was murdered in Warrington earlier this year in a hate crime-filled attack just because they happen to be trans. A 16-year-old kid, is murdered for being who they are. And Brianna, along with other people who have been victims of, or survivors of hate crime and abuse across the world, will be remembered alongside acknowledging the contribution that our Black communities have made, because our vigil this year for Pride will fall on the 22nd of June. It's open to everyone. It's from 7 o'clock to 7:45 at the Hat Factory. We welcome you to come along and hear more about what's going on, hear from some other members of the active members of the community. And we are working with hopefully a couple of asylum seekers as well to tell their story about why they have had to flee their countries because of who they are. And last year at our vigil, we were really lucky to have the Human Dignity Trust talk to us, and also then JFLAG, who are the equality rights campaigners for Jamaica, send a message of solidarity for our first Pride last year. So please do join us and remember Brianna J and others on the 22nd of June this year. So we want to turn it over to you. Do you have questions more for Kelsey and Elle, because they're far more interesting than hearing me speak. They hear me speak all the while. So if anyone has a question online as well, if you can either put it in the chat if you don't want to ask it out loud, or you can just shout out, because I can't really see the chat because my eyesight isn't that good.
Because I should wear glasses and phone.
Yes. Is there any questions from anyone? Fab.
Can I just chip in and say that last year's Pride was awesome, and I had a really, really good time. And I had been planning to bring my daughter and all of her queer friends, but they were all on a Duke of Edinburgh trip, and it was even more awesome for that because I just came and had a good time by myself and didn't have to be responsible for anyone. But if I did, I've still got it in the diary to make it, but I've got other stuff going on with my family moving house and stuff. Anyway, so I'm still hoping to make it. But if I did come and you need volunteers, what's the minimum age? Because they'll all have turned 16 by then. Oh no, except my daughter won't have done. I don't know, what's the minimum age for volunteers?
The minimum age for volunteering is 16, and so we're working with Barnfield College and others as well around some of their, and they'll be buddied up with an experienced volunteer as well.
Okay, so 15 and 361 days isn't old enough, is it?
It's fine.
Let's talk offline, Claire.
Okay, righto.
Marek, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I can come in. Thank you. So first of all, thank you so much for your presentation. I thought it worked really well, going right back to the origins, but bringing it all up to date in Luton. And that's the bit I wanted to just sort of follow through on. So Kelsey used a couple of examples of, lived experience and experience of hatred and discrimination. I thought they were well chosen because they seem to me to be linked in some way, in the sense that, you had people experiencing abuse on the streets, but also blockages around dialogue and understanding in education and yeah. So I just wanted to sort of follow that through really and ask your thoughts, yourself and Elle, about those blockages and you spoke about allies and that community effort to to be a place where we don't have hatred. That's something that Luton prides itself on.
Yeah.
So how do we work that through? Because there's some really difficult,
honestly,
challenging issues
it
around
is really challenging.
Respecting people's beliefs and understanding and all of that. So any reflections on that would be enormously helpful.
I think it's hard, isn't it? Because I absolutely have like the utmost respect for anyone's belief or religion. But if a belief or religion is fundamentally saying that somebody can't exist and that's impacting statutory education, then that's a problem. I don't know what the solution to that problem is, but I have tried to explain to schools that they need to take a robust stance in that you tackle homophobia, biphobia, transphobia in the same way as you would like racism or something. So we had a teacher asking us whether they should tell people off for saying, oh, that's gay. And it's like, yes, like, yes, you should. Like, please challenge that language. Please challenge normalizing using the word gay as negative. Like, I don't know if there's like an overall solution. And I think that although things get better and better and better for people in terms of the work we do to support young people, and I do that in my job, not so much in Pride, we haven't got capacity to set up stuff for under 18s at the moment, apart from Pride is open to everyone. We are finding that young people that are of faith backgrounds are the ones that are struggling the most with their gender identity and their sexuality. So I would love to have an opportunity maybe to have a conversation, I don't know, like with faith leaders in the town, with things like that, about how we can all work together to help this. But I do know that young people of faith feel like probably in the worst situation in this town at the moment, because they can see other people thriving and being themselves and being accepted, and it's like, oh, but they're doing it and it's okay. But me, if I did, I would be, I don't know, I'd be kicked out, I'd be ostracized by my family, I wouldn't be accepted as part of my community anymore. That's a difficult one. I don't know what the answer is though.
I think you put your finger. We don't know what the answer is, but we need to ask some of those questions. And just to sort of sub part of that is the discussion with teachers, because presumably they're finding themselves in difficult positions around all of this. And do you offer support to teachers around the sort of developing the curriculum? And is that something that bringing other voices into that to create some sort of consensus? There might be some area there.
Yeah, I think that we could. It's hard because obviously as Pride in Luton, we're all volunteers with a full-time job. There is certainly capacity to educate people more, and we have a goal through Luton Sexual Health to maybe put on next year the town's first LGBT education conference. So we would like to put on a conference which was an opportunity for professionals to come to learn in like a big setting, to do some events and talk to people, and then go away with resources that they feel confident teaching. So when we did a World AIDS Day event, we did it Luton Sexual Health and Pride in Luton in partnership, and we kind of delivered a combination of education and training and support. And then we invited like teachers, colleges, universities, whoever we could, and actually said, okay, so you need to talk about HIV as part of the curriculum. So come to our event and we'll teach you about it, and then you can go away with these resources and you feel better equipped to do it. So I think that it would be really good to have an LGBT conference is something we'd like to do.
There's a question from Maureen online. What other countries is homosexuality illegal, which generally impacts on travel? So there's currently 14 countries to the last count. However, this might increase in the coming days because of some legislation what's going through in African countries where they're rescinding some equality laws what have gone forward, and they're going to rescind them. But 14 countries currently is punishable by death. So let's not even worry about those which it's illegal. 14 countries you can choose. You can be punishable by death. If we take some of the Middle Eastern countries, so Saudi Arabia, you get at least a choice of which death you choose. So you can be stoned by the mob, you can be dropped from the highest perch, you can be halved by a sword, you can be hung. They're not humane enough, unfortunately, to offer you the electric chair or an injection or a shooting squad. just yet. You know, we might get those opportunities in the future for those. If we take other countries, so in the Commonwealth, there is at least 23 Commonwealth countries where it's illegal and punishable by up to 10 years imprisonment with hard labour for being LGBTIQ, and Kelsey's can come in.
Yeah, I just want to add something to that as well, that in most of the Commonwealth countries, it wasn't, there was no laws preventing any LGBTQ plus existence before colonisation either at all. So it was kind of a thing that we spread and then went, oh, all these countries doing this, like it wasn't there before.
Absolutely, I think that's a key point. You know, we have a role, a duty, what we've played in that through colonisation. But how it impacts travel, what was Maureen's other part of the question? I think as an LGBTIQ person, I will always check the FCO website to see what it says, to see if it's safe for us to travel there. I was told, for example, my personal experience, I was told when we were going to go to Borneo for our honeymoon, that don't worry, as a white Western tourist, you will be safe. You won't be challenged by the authorities. And when I said, well, what about locals? They went, no, it's not acceptable from them because it's run by the Kingdom of Brunei. So at that point, I asked them if they knew what white privileged was. And they looked at me blankly and I went, you're not the right travel agents for me. And no, we're not going to go to Borneo because we're not going to use my colour, my skin, or my wealth, or that I'm a Westerner, to actually buy me privileges that others don't have. So it does challenge where you can go to. Jordan is pretty much the only country in the Middle East you could travel to where actually it's not frowned upon. Well, any kinds of public displays of affection are frowned upon, but you won't be imprisoned or you won't face harassment, such as Morocco or Saudi or Dubai or any of those places. Again, Dubai, you can go if you're a white Western tourist because you've got money. Is there any other questions from anyone? Shahir.
Hello. Oops, that was very loud. Yeah, not too much of questions. Just wanted to ask you the difference between those two flags, and if you can explain what the history behind those two. And also, you mentioned 2 incidents in Luton. Do you actually have any data for other incidents in Luton, and is it a worrying thing for you to be concerned about?
So I don't have any data about things, but I could probably find it, like, only because data's not my data, not data. So yeah, I don't know the facts. I do more like the statistics, but we could definitely find out something. I don't think it's getting worse. I don't think there's an overwhelming feeling of it getting worse in Luton at all. Like you say, you feel more like we live just outside of Luton in Central Beds, but we both work in town. You feel more safe here than like in Central Beds. Yeah, like people are much more accepting and more friendly and more, they just have much more of an attitude of acceptance. And also the different flags. So the flag that's hanging on here is called the Progress flag. So the rainbow was like the original trans flag, the original sort of gay liberation flag, but is normally used more by like lesbian, gay and bisexual people than anything else. And then it was updated, I don't know, 2008. It was made to be the Progress flag. So you've got the colours of the trans flag, the white, pink and blue. So white is like gender neutrality, pink to represent trans women, blue to represent trans men. And then you have the brown and black stripes. I know one's for people of colour, but one's for something else as well. I can't remember.
They're both for people.
Oh, okay. I thought they were both for different things. But okay, to represent people of colour in the community that might not have felt represented by the original sort of gay liberation and the original rainbow flag. And the pink and blue flag is just the trans flag on its own. So I feel like the whole flag thing is more just like, it's fun. We have this one, like Luton Town have a flag, yeah. Like as in the football club, I've seen loads of them over the last sort of day. It's just a different one for a different group.
So in all, in the community, there's 23 flags, what represent different sections. So you might have pansexual, you might have asexual, might have asposexual, you've got bisexual, you've got a lesbian flag. So on Pride, we'll fly all 21 of those flags along with hat factories. So if you look up as a member of, and including the straight ally flag as well. So actually, if you look at the hat factory, you will be able to represent and identify yourself. It's worth, so the rainbow flag originally started with 7 colours. It was a guy called Gilbert Baker who designed it. It dropped, and each one of them have a different meaning. It dropped to 6 colours because fluorescent hot pink was really difficult to come by in those times, and it was really expensive fabric. So they dropped the pink. And in 2008, it was when the Philly flag introduced the black and brown stripe. And then it was about 2010 that the trans flag was introduced. And in 2022, they also introduced the intersex purple circle in the middle of the white triangle there as well. Unfortunately, one of those has gone missing, so we need to repurchase one of those. Just on flags, though, I think, and your question about hate crime, what we get told a lot is people stop reporting hate crime because nothing happens. Yeah. We know people who, and my own personal experience, after you report it 5 or 6 and nothing gets done, and it's the same person, it's the same van, you stop reporting it because what's the point? The police don't support you, so what's the point of wasting your time? I think like in some of our community, if they were to report hate crime, probably the same with racism as well. They would do nothing else with their day. They would just be on the phone to 101, or online logging hate crime. So people stop, and I think the figures are massively skewed because of that. And I think with Ida Hot Day and a request from Pride in Luton to the council, and it's been going on a number of years now, is that actually representation matters. So actually we fly the Windrush flag on Windrush Day because we're representing our Windrush communities. So actually on Ida Hot Day, the least you can do is fly the Pride flag, because actually it's about representation. It's about being part of the town, being understood, and this is our building as residents. This isn't the council's building. And I know I'm preaching to a converted sitting in my room here on that. We are 1 minute over, but if anyone has any other questions, do feel free. You can drop us a message on, it's just a reminder, 24th of June, Pride will be taking place in my Hat District from 1 to 1. And we've got a brilliant new stage in Hat Gardens, supported by EasyJet Holidays. I need to say that because that's part of their sponsorship. And if you want to get in contact with us, the information is there on the screen as well. We will work out how to share these slides more widely, and the recording as well with colleagues who are on the call. But thanks very much for your time, and hopefully you found it informative and interesting. And thank you very much to Kelsey and Elle for giving up their lunch break to come in and talk to us today.
It was a lunch break anyway. Thanks, guys.